7 players inside the current WTA Top 50 have signed up for a clay court tournament in a small Catalan town most tennis fans have never heard of. That fact alone should stop you in your tracks. Because when names like Leylah Fernandez, Barbora Krejcikova, and Alexandra Eala appear on the entry list of a WTA 125 event running at the exact same time as the Madrid Open, something deeper is going on beneath the surface of the professional tennis calendar, and the story it tells about Alex Eala's evolving career is one of the most fascinating subplots of the entire 2026 clay season. Let me paint the picture. The tournament is called the Torneig Internacional de Tenis Femení Solgironès Open Catalunya Ciutat de la Bisbal. That is a mouthful. It will be staged from April 27th through May 3rd in Girona, deep in Catalonia's coastal interior, a place far removed from the glamour and the cameras of the Madrid Open that overlaps almost entirely on those exact dates. And yet, somehow, the entry list reads like a mid-tier WTA main draw. Fernandez at number 24. Wang Xinyu at 34. Endley at 37. Katerina Siniakova at 42. Eala at 45. Peyton Stearns at 46. Jessica Bouzas Maneiro at 48. Laura Siegemund, Krejcikova, McCartney Kessler, Beatriz Haddad Maya, Ajla Tomiljanovic, Eva Liss. The depth of this field is astonishing for a tournament at this level, and the reason it exists in the first place is one of the unspoken mechanisms of professional tennis scheduling. This is a backup plan. Plain and simple. Nearly every one of those top 50 names is also entered in the Madrid Open, which is a WTA 1000, the crown jewel of the spring clay swing. Madrid runs from April 21st through May 3rd. The first week handles the early rounds, and the second week is reserved for the quarterfinals, semifinals, and final. If Eala or Fernandez or Siniakova exits Madrid in the first few rounds, they are not going to sit around the Spanish capital twiddling their thumbs. They are going to jump in a car, drive northeast, and get competitive reps on clay in La Bisbal. This is how the circuit actually works behind the scenes, and understanding it gives you real insight into how players at Eala's ranking manage their schedules with surgical precision. But the question hovering over all of this is whether Alex Eala will actually play in La Bisbal. And answering that question requires understanding where she is right now in one of the most extraordinary stretches any Filipino athlete has ever experienced in global professional sport. Rewind to early 2025. Alex Eala was ranked outside the top 140. She was grinding through qualifiers, hoping for wild cards, cobbling together a season on the lower fringes of the WTA Tour. The Philippines had never produced a top-level professional tennis player in the modern era, and while Eala had shown flashes of brilliance as a junior, she won the 2022 French Open Girls singles title. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy from the age of 13. She had the pedigree and the tools. The transition from prodigious teenager to consistent professional was proving as brutal for her as it does for almost everyone. Then something shifted. Not overnight, but gradually, through the second half of 2025 and into the early months of 2026, Eala started winning matches she previously would have lost. The margins in women's professional tennis are razor-thin, and the difference between being ranked 140 and being ranked 45 is not some chasm of talent. It is composure at 30 all. It is one extra first serve and a tiebreak. It is the ability to hold your nerve when the crowd is screaming and the scoreboard is tight and your legs are burning after 2 hours under the sun. Eala found that gear. At the 2025 US Open, she became the first Filipino player in the Open era to win a Grand Slam main draw match. Think about that. A country of over 115 million people, and in the entire history of modern professional tennis, no one from the Philippines had ever done that. Eala did it, and she kept going. Her ranking climbed. She entered 2026 with genuine momentum, and by February she was inside the top 50 for the first time. The 2026 hardcourt season became a showcase. In Dubai, she dismantled Jasmine Paolini, the world number 8, in a match that had jaws dropping in the commentary booth. Her ball striking that day was immaculate. She was hitting through the court with a weight of shot that Paolini, a French Open finalist, simply could not absorb. The geometry of Eala's game was on full display, the way she uses angles off both wings, the way she constructs points with patience before uncorking an aggressive forehand inside-out that catches opponents flat-foot on the deuce side. Paolini had no answers. Then came Indian Wells, and the match against Coco Gauff that captivated tennis fans across the globe. Eala was the third first seed. Gauff was the fourth seed, a two-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most famous athletes on the planet. And from the very first game, Eala dictated the rallies. She won the opening set 6-2, breaking Gauff repeatedly with that same disciplined baseline game. Gauff was clearly struggling with a left arm issue as the match progressed, and she ultimately retired trailing 2-love in the second set, but the scoreline did not lie. Eala had been the better player on the court, and she knew it, and the entire tennis world knew it. That match pushed her to a career-high ranking of number 29, making her the highest-ranked Filipino in WTA Tour history, the first from her country to break into the top 30, to record multiple wins over top 10 players, and to reach a tour-level final in the Open era. Every single one of those milestones belongs to the same 20-year-old from Pasig City, who started swinging a racket nearly her own size on the shell courts of Valle Verde Country Club as a 4-year-old. At the Miami Open, Eala kept rolling. She beat Laura Siegemund in a grueling 3-set marathon 6-7, 6-3, 6-3, showing the kind of physical resilience that separates the contenders from the pretenders at this level. She followed that with a straight sets win over Magda Linette to reach the round of 16, where she ran into Karolina Muchova, and Muchova, on that particular day, was untouchable. A 6-love, 6-2 scoreline does not flatter Muchova. It was one of those performances where the opponent simply played at a level beyond what anyone could handle. Eala took her lumps, absorbed the lesson, and moved on. Because that is what professionals do. They learn from the losses as much as the wins. Now she stands at a crossroads in her season, and the clay court swing ahead of her is absolutely crucial. Eala's schedule for April tells the story of a player who is thinking strategically about every single week. She begins her clay season at the Linz Open, a WTA 500 event in Austria, running from April 6th through 12th. It is played on indoor clay, which is a slightly different beast than the outdoor red dirt she will face later in Madrid and at Roland Garros. The balls skid a little more indoors. The bounce is more predictable. The conditions suit players who can flatten out their ground strokes and take time away from opponents, which plays right into Eala's hands if she can adjust her timing quickly enough. Eala is the 7th seed in Linz, which means she avoids the top players in the early rounds and has a genuine pathway to the quarterfinals and beyond. After that, she has the WTA 125 in Oeiras, Portugal, from April 14th through 20th, another clay court event that could serve as a tune-up before the big ones. Then comes Madrid from April 21st, the WTA 1000 where the pressure ramps up and the ranking points on offer are enormous. And lurking in the background, overlapping with Madrid's second week, is La Bisbal. So will she actually play in La Bisbal? Here is the honest tactical assessment. If Eala reaches the quarterfinals or beyond in Madrid, there is no chance she plays in Catalonia. She will be too deep in the main draw of a premier event to even consider it. But if she loses in the first or second round of Madrid, which is entirely possible given the depth of a WTA 1000 draw, then La Bisbal becomes extraordinarily attractive. She would get 4 or 5 extra competitive matches on outdoor clay. She would accumulate ranking points that matter more than people realize at her level, where the difference between being seeded and unseeded at the French Open could come down to a single tournament result. And she would maintain her match rhythm heading into the Italian Open and then Roland Garros. This is the calculus that players in Eala's position face constantly, and it is one of the least discussed aspects of professional tennis. The public sees the big tournaments, the Grand Slams, the Masters events. What they do not see is the careful mosaic of smaller events that players stitch together to build and protect their rankings. A WTA 125 event in a Catalan town might not make the highlight reels, but for a player like Eala, it can be the difference between entering Roland Garros with confidence and entering it with doubt. There is a broader dimension to this as well, and it touches on what makes Eala's story so compelling beyond the tennis itself. She is carrying an entire country on her shoulders. When she plays, the Filipino community around the world tunes in. Social media erupts. Filipino fans traveled in droves to Indian Wells to watch her play golf, filling sections of the stadium with Philippine flags and creating an atmosphere that even Gauff herself acknowledged after the match. Eala is not just building a tennis career. She is building something closer to a cultural movement. The Philippines has never had a global tennis star. Basketball, boxing, those are the traditional sports of national pride. Tennis was an afterthought. Eala is changing that equation in real time, and the weight of that responsibility is something no ranking number can capture. What makes her even more intriguing from a tactical perspective is the environment that shaped her game. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca from the age of 13, living away from her family, studying alongside some of the best young players in the world, and absorbing the philosophy that Nadal's coaches instill in every student. That tennis is won through relentless effort, through suffocating consistency, through the willingness to grind out every single point as if it were match point. You can see that influence in Eala's game. She does not give you free points. She makes you work for everything. Her unforced error count in the Gauff match at Indian Wells was just 12. 12. Against the fourth-ranked player in the world. That kind of discipline does not come from talent alone. It comes from thousands of hours on the red clay courts of Manacor, hitting ball after ball after ball until the patterns become second nature. The clay season ahead is where Eala has the potential to truly announce herself as a permanent fixture in the upper echelons of the WTA. Her game is naturally suited to the surface. The longer rallies reward her court craft and her ability to change direction. The higher bounce gives her extra time to set up her forehand, which is her most dangerous weapon. And the mental endurance required to win matches on clay, those slow, grinding three-setters where the sun beats down and the points stretch to 20 shots, plays directly to the mentality she developed at the Nadal Academy. But there are challenges ahead, and they are real. The jump from the 40 to 50 ranking range into the sustained top 30 is one of the hardest transitions in tennis. The players ahead of her are not going to move aside. Machova's demolition in Miami was a reminder that the gap between very good and elite can still feel vast on certain days. The clay season also brings surface specialists into the mix, players who have grown up on red dirt and know its rhythms the way Eala knows the hard courts of the American swing. She will need to adapt quickly, and Linz will be the first test. The Bisbal decision ultimately will be made in the moment. If Madrid goes well, it becomes irrelevant. If Madrid goes poorly, it becomes essential. And either outcome feeds into the larger narrative of Eala's season, which is about a young woman from a country with no tennis tradition defying every expectation, breaking every record, and forcing the world to pay attention. There is something poetic about the possibility of Eala playing in a small town in Catalonia, far from the cameras and the center courts of Madrid. Some of the most important matches in a player's career happen in places nobody remembers. A WTA 125 event in Girona might not carry the prestige of a Grand Slam, but if Eala shows up there and wins 4 or 5 matches on outdoor clay, it could be the foundation upon which a deep French Open run is built. Sometimes the quiet tournaments matter the most. The entry list for Bisbal is a fascinating document. It tells you that 7 of the top 50 players in the world are hedging their bets. It tells you that the scheduling structures of professional tennis are more complex and strategic than most fans realize. And it tells you that Alex Eala, the girl from Pasig City who picked up a racket at 4 years old and traveled halfway around the globe to train at a Legends Academy, is now embedded in the very heart of the WTA ecosystem, making decisions about her schedule like a seasoned veteran, managing her calendar with the same precision she brings to her baseline game. Whether she plays Bisbal or not, the story of Alex Eala's 2026 clay season is one worth following with your full attention. Because what she is building right now, week by week, tournament by tournament, point by point, is something the Philippines has never seen before. And the rest of the tennis world is only beginning to understand what she is capable of.